All right. We're getting all the kinks out in one day in one show. This is great. I love the man. I love the man. I've worked with him for many years. He's a great guy, and I keep telling myself that because he signs my paycheck. Today's show is all about the Penguins of Stanley. Now, some of you might be confused by that because we're going to the Falkland Islands. Or if you're from Argentina, Las Malvinas. I am purposely calling this place Stanley. For those of you that aren't from the Austral South, there's a piece of very sensitive and very painful history down here. There was a war in 1982 between, I'm using the Coles notes here, the Falkland Islands were sort of a battle object between the United Kingdom and the Argentinians. And I don't want to get into the politics of it because to the Argentinians and to the Brits and to the Falklanders, it is still an open wound. It's still a very painful thing. So if I refer to the island in general, I'm going to refer to it by its most common inhabitants, the penguins. So I will refer to it as Isla Penguino. And if I refer to the place, it is because I'm referring to Stanley, the only city on the island, of which there's about 2,000 people there. The penguins outnumber human beings on the island 8-1. And by some counts, that's a little bit conservative. It's probably more like 28-1. But it's hard to count penguins after you hit about 10,000. So, today's show is going to talk to you about the penguins you can easily see from Stanley, either from walking distance or from taking the bus. Now, this is where Shore Excursion stops buying me beer. I'm not here to sell you excursions. However, in a port like Stanley, there's a number of wonderful beaches that are on private land that you must buy a ticket to go in a Land Rover, to go on the most bumpy ride you've ever had in your life. Like some of you may have kidneys that fall out of your body cavity. Is anybody going to volunteer pony? This is what you're going to do for 45 minutes. Is anybody going to Bertha's Beach? Is anybody going to Newman Station? Okay. You will be going through some ground that is covered by tussock grass. These are lumps of grass over bog country that swallows the road. It will be difficult for you if you have any sort of back problems or if you are, carrying a chandelier. So be warned that the 45-minute ride from hell is completely worth it. Once you go out to these distant beaches, for those of you that aren't going to go out on an excursion, there is a ho-ho bus, and I'm not just saying that because it's December. It is the hop-on, hop-off bus. Tickets are $20. You take U.S. cash. I prefer when I'm down here to pay by credit card. It's just easier. You don't have to worry about exchanging currencies. They also accept British pounds here. They do not accept wrinkly bills. So if you have the wrinkliest handful of $1 bills because you stopped in Las Vegas before this cruise, okay, they will not accept that. They will not honor that currency. What I do is I go to the casino or I go to the front desk and I have them exchange my wrinkly bills or bills that are at all marked up for brand new crisp bills. It's something to do with the British bank on the island only being able to handle crisp flat bills. The hop-on hop-off bus goes out to Gypsy Cove, which is my absolute favorite beach on the island, where there's Gentoo penguins. You can go out there as long as you want all day. This is a spot where if we leave you behind, if you're off on your own tour, whether that's a tour of a penguin beach or a tour of a pub, because some of you like to go and enjoy that, right? This is Little Britain after all. If we leave you behind and you're not on a princess tour, it is up to you to fly to Montevideo. That is an incredibly expensive flight. Like more than what you paid on this cruise to be here. So, remember, it's a tender port. That slows everything down. Remember that when you're looking at penguins or having a beverage, time dilates. I give myself a full hour of oops time, which is painful because if I'm out at Gypsy Cove, I'm filming a little nature documentary about the penguins there, and I'll show you about that here in the show. You don't want to leave, but make sure you are not in a rush to come back. The other factor we're having is that if you looked outside, and with the captain's announcement this morning about Punta Arenas, there's a storm. We are racing in front of the storm. This is practice for the Drake Passage. This is about what the Drake Shake feels like. Has anybody been seasick today? No? It's because they're all at home in their cabins sleeping right now? Remember, if you get sick at all, and it's just not the flu, something like that. But if it's just queasiness, green skin apples help. Ginger helps if you take ginger root and chop it up, put it in your tea. I can't help even though I am a ginger. It's not like that. Scopolamine, bonine, those little patches behind your ear. I think the bracelets aren't worth the cotton they're woven with. If pressing on your wrist could have helped, we would have saved a lot of lives over the years for seasickness. But the patches do help. Don't wait until you're seasick to use them. If you know that you're wobbly and you have a problem with that, put it on early. So if you know you're seasick, you should be wearing your bandages now. We are not yet through the storm. We're going to have storm probably for the next 2 days. Remember, it's not the height of the waves that's the problem, it's how far they are spaced out. When the ship goes up the front and down the back and up and down. So with that, let's start the show on Penguins. I love this show. This is my absolute favorite show. I love Penguins. I am this close to moving to Stanley to teach at the middle school. My grandfather was an RAF veteran. He was an electrician for the Spitfires. He was underneath the Battle of Britain before he was shipped off to go chase Rommel in the desert down in Africa. And because of that, I can get automatic UK citizenship. And it's just a matter of sending off money to His Majesty and paperwork. And I think it'd be an amazing thing because on this island are some of the most pristine quartz beaches and some of the greatest penguins you'll ever see in your life. Penguins that love shoelaces. They'll come up to you, they'll pick at your shoelaces. I've had penguins standing on my toe tips, using me as a wind block. I don't know how to feel about that. I've never been fat shamed by a penguin before. It's truly amazing, and it's not a place to get a suntan. This is the middle of the depressurization zone of the Drake Passage, so odds are in the morning it'll be sunny, in the afternoon it'll be cloudy, in the departure time it'll be rainy. So you'll save money on sunscreen, but I tell you what, these penguins are fantastic. Let's get into it. So if you have any questions, or if you would like to have, say, your penguin picture identified, send me an email. By the way, on the island, there is very little, if any, cell signal. So if you have one of those global cell plans, unless they specifically note the Falkland Islands, or Las Malvinas, you have no cell phone. That's sometimes a bit of a disturbing thing for folks. If you're in the town site, there is an FIC card you can buy. If you think the Wi-Fi on board's expensive, try the Falkland Island stuff. I don't think it's worth it. It's sort of 28K dial-up kind of stuff. It's basically you sit there in the gift shop and you can almost open YouTube. But if you are somebody who is reliant on an ability to call 911 or things like that, keep that in mind, that when you're out there in camp, they call it, when you're outside of the city, you're outside of the city. Cruise ducks. I should have changed that to cruise penguins. Now the logistics of having little tiny ballistic penguins is that if I throw these, the morgue will start filling up real quick. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go on the honor system here. Okay, we're going to see what kind of people we have. I'm going to give you a handful. Okay, I'm going to give you a handful. I'm going to go over here. I'm just going to give you one because that's all I have left. There you go. You got that one? Okay, sure. So one of two things is going to happen. Either they're going to pass it along and share, and if you want one, if it means something to you, you'll keep it. If it's okay, you just pass it on. Or after the show, you're going to attack them and rip their clothing from them, and there'll be body parts everywhere. Look at the look on his face. He's terrified. I cannot throw them in the audience. They're too small. They're little black penguins. I always have more. I'll have more for the next show. But let's begin. Please continue to show me your photos. I have a friend of mine right now from our last cruise who's on Easter Island. And they're sending me live photos from Easter Island. How cool is that? A reminder about the clouds, because we're getting to an area where there's unbelievably good creative shaped clouds. Take pictures of clouds, submit them to me. You can email them to me. You can show me them in the back of your phone or your camera. I'll take a picture. I'd like to do it where my show at the end of this cruise on clouds has a bunch of your photos in it. I'm also making a little video about that sort of stuff. And there are penguin nerds amongst us. This is from this morning at breakfast. This is amazing. Who here knew that this is really a penguin cruise. It's amazing. We've already been able to see 2 different species of penguins. We've had the Humboldt penguins a little bit further north, and we're now into the Magellanic penguin territory. The unfortunate thing is they like to live on little craggy rocks and whatnot, and we tend to not like to sail on craggy rocks, so we don't get very close. But when you're in town, especially when we're in Ushuaia or Stanley, it's amazing. The one good thing about missing Punta Arenas, and that, if I can say that, the one good thing is that we're not really in the right time of year to go and see great numbers of penguins. And so a lot of you who would have booked a very expensive penguin tour there would have been disappointed by 3 scrawny penguins and about 112 signs that say, look, there's penguins. So if you come back on the other side of January, it's a bit better for there. Now, there is a flu going on. I know I've covered this in some other shows. There's a flu going on in the Austral South. We are already in the zone of the flu. It is not a flu like COVID-19 that can affect us, but we are the a mammal #1 carrier of this flu. We get it in our boots, we get it on our pants, and we kneel down and we lay down. We put it in our backpacks, and we move it from colony to colony to colony. This is nearly 100% fatal amongst penguins and amongst elephant seals. It's important that when you're out on these beaches, that you assume that there's penguin flu there. And at the entrance and exit of all of these beaches, in fact, the entrance and exit where you go up the gangway to Stanley, there's this little mat that has some juice in it. I think it's Dettol is what it is. You need to go there and kind of squid your shoes, rub your shoes. It kills the buggly wugglies. It means that we can slow down the progress of the bird flu. Now this is where the rubber hits the road. York Bay, which is one of my favorite spots to go to, right beside Gypsy Cove, has had 100% of the 44 mated pairs of Gentoo penguins killed off. This happened a month ago. It's incredibly sad. And to think that I was there not even 9 months ago, filming a documentary about these lovely penguins and their struggles, and they're all gone, is incredibly sad. This is one of the unregulated beaches where tourists can go. There are some rangers out there kind of advising you not to go and fondle the penguins, that kind of stuff, but people are overwhelmed. Penguins are amazing. We see them in Disney movies and Pixar movies. We see them in zoos. The amount of people that want to hug a penguin is amazing. But remember, these are wild creatures. Treat them with respect. Keep a distance. They're asking now that you stay at least 20 feet away from the penguins. If the penguins approach you, sort of move back a little bit. I mean, if they chase you down to give you snuggles, fine. But remember that we are ultimately doing a harm to them if we infect them with penguin flu from other beaches. Beaches like in Ushuaia. We can take that penguin flu from Stanley and bring it up to Montevideo or to Buenos Aires. So do the penguins a solid. Make sure your boots are clean, and make sure you're not, I don't know, doing backstroke and penguin poop. Pretty self-explanatory. Okay, penguins. What is your favorite penguin? If you think of all the different types of penguins, from all the different movies, you've seen penguins on TV. Which one is your favorite? Really, there's 2 that it comes down to. Sydney or Mario? And what's funny is when you look up penguin jokes, penguins and Stanley, well, you get this too. I mean, they're not unfamiliar with Stanley, but what I think of when I think of this sort of stuff is I think about the penguins that have amazing behaviors. In the bird nerd world, you have 2 different subsets. You have the checklist people that really love to see rare birds. They'll travel days to see a rare bird. Or you get the behavior people like me. I can watch a crow or a raven or a magpie, something common, figuring something out, and it's fascinating to me. So I like the thought that penguins are flighted birds. Penguins 100% do fly, but they do it underwater. They're aquatic, swimming birds. They're no longer land birds. In fact, most of their lives are spent in the ocean. And when you start to see them swimming through the water, porpoising, jumping up, having a great time, when you see the adaptations to their wings, to their lungs, they fly underwater. So keep that in mind when you see them. So, big picture, small picture. I talked about this my last show, and certainly if you look outside, we're beginning to see this. This is the Great Pacific Pressurization, wind coming in, hitting the Andes Mountains, coming south. We are right there. We're right in the middle of one of the yellow arrows, right? That's where the wind is. We're going to be coming down through here, eventually going over here. On this side, it's much calmer. On this side, it's cranky. Caliente over here. Now, when we look at the Drake Passage, again, this is the northern part of the Drake Passage, the most vicious part. That day we go from Cape Horn to Stanley is going to be potentially the roughest water we'll see this cruise. I don't expect it to be any rougher than what we've been experiencing for the past half day, but it means that there is a possibility, a non-zero possibility, that we may not be able to go to Ushuaia. We may not be able to go to Stanley. Those two, hold on. Remember, my name is Fernando if you want to complain, okay? In those ports, there's some difficulties getting in sometimes. Similarly to Punta Arenas, the harbor master has the ability to shut down the port if the waves are too high. The weather forecast right now for Ushuaia and Stanley is looking okay. If you want to keep it that way, I accept PayPal and credit card. Okay? We will let you folks know well in advance if there's going to be any further cancellations. And believe me, if we lose Stanley, that's like losing the gem of the crown. It is the most amazing stuff. They should just call this the Stanley Penguin Cruise, really, because it's so amazing. I can't reiterate how amazing both Ushuaia and Stanley are to this whole thing. I don't think we're going to get this. I don't think we're going to be dealing with Drake Dragon. We're definitely advanced Drake Shake. There were folks last night wandering the halls, scared, at 3 in the morning. I'm a bit of a night owl, so I was staying up late, and I saw that there was anxiety amongst the people. It's okay. These ships are designed for this. We have a specialized captain, Paulo Rivera. I was chatting with him this morning when we were at the Malay Glacier. He's an ice captain, and that is a captain's captain. Right? He will get us through nice and safe. Now that said, you're going to notice that the glassware is tinkling in the bar. You're going to notice that your coat hangers in your closet will sing you a symphony all night. I had stuff falling off of my dresser drawer on the floor. Scared the heck out of me. I flung eggshells halfway across my room because a plate fell off. So if you have something valuable and breakable, make sure that you put it in the closet with the door closed. What I like to do, because I hate the sound of my safety deposit box going clank, 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 clank all night, even if there's nothing in there, put in a code just to keep the door shut. It makes your night's sleep a little bit easier. What is the life of a penguin like? Some of you think about penguins and you instantly think about Antarctica, and you think about scenes like this. Unbelievably harsh and cold, blistering wind, -40, where it doesn't matter if it's Celsius or Fahrenheit. Colder than the hubs of hell. And this is part of the story. These are emperor penguins here. But most of the penguins in this world are actually subtropical. Some of them, like the Humboldt penguins, actually are tropical. And they have a problem not with keeping warm, but with cooling off. The reason why penguins only exist in the southern hemisphere is they haven't figured out a way to get across the equator. If they were to do that, they would completely take over the ecological niche in the north. In fact, there's a breeding program happening in Iceland with some of the Humboldts and with some of the Australian little fairy blue penguins, where they're having to keep them penned in because they're so happy up there. They have no predators, they have lots of food, that they don't want to let them get out. They would be the most adorable invasive species ever. Much better than cane toads and rabbits and mongoose and that kind of stuff. Some of you have learned about penguins that have personalities from movies like Happy Feet. Who's seen Happy Feet? I think we have it on the TV here. I think one of the channels you can see it. Some of you remember this guy. Remember the old Batman show? Right? And penguins were personified as kind of crafty, kind of people, like a bit of a villain kind of thing. And that perpetuates through. I mean, Danny DeVito did a good job when I was growing up with a penguin, and there's a new penguin, right? An Irish penguin. It's an amazing thing. I tend to lean toward this view of a penguin, that they're happy little adventurers more than conniving little, I don't know, bearer robins, robbing barons. But let's talk about the actual penguin. They're strange birds. They really are strange birds. They're a flightless bird adapted for swimming. There's three main families. My favorite is called the brushtail family, and I'll show you them in a little bit. But some of the universal adaptations are things like lungs that go down into their arms. So your humerus is the big bone at the top of your arm. They have lungs that go alongside that. They have lungs that aren't just one set like how we have. They have one set, two sets, three sets, a big one in the middle, and then the arm sets. They don't just go. They breathe in, they breathe out, they breathe in, they breathe out, they breathe in, they breathe out. That's one cycle. They're always cycling because to them, they're trying to regulate their internal temperature. The coldest thing they put in their body is air. And so they either need to warm it up or they need to dump heat. They don't have sweat glands. So the only places that they can shed heat is in their mouth. Like how a dog pants. If you ever want to see a very disappointing photograph, look up inside of Penguin's mouth. Do you have any Star Wars fans here? You know the Snarlack pit, the big sand thing with the big mouth? That's what it looks like inside of a penguin's mouth. It's a huge, high surface area. It's not sharp. They look like spikes. They're soft, fleshy things with lots of surface area. They are panting. This is how they shed their heat. Or they'll have bald spots in front of their eyes or in front of their beak. That's how they can cool off. Or they'll lay their bellies on the ground and their armpits will be a little bit bald. And they'll just lay on the ground. I used to have a dog called a Shiba Inu, little red Japanese fox, Suki. She was adorable. We used to go down to my basement and lay belly down on the cement by my laundry machine. That's how she cooled off. It's great. If we look at other structural adaptations, like in the skeleton, we can see that they don't have much of a tail to think of. They have a pigeon-style, little fused tailbone. They have a sternum that is really fused together. Massive breast tissue, muscles attach on that. Not so much for absolute strength, but for endurance. These are endurance swimmers. For a penguin to swim 4, 5, 6, 700 miles in this kind of weather, no problem. Could you imagine that? You're swimming at the surface and there's 40-foot waves and it's dark and the Wi-Fi doesn't work? How terrible is that? And Fernando's doing an announcement in 12 languages? I mean, terrible. I kid, he's a good guy. Now, in the Falkland Islands, Las Malvinas, Stanley, Isla Pinguino, you know what I'm talking about. There are two major islands. There's the west one and the east one. 95% of the population is on the east one in the little town of Stanley, right there. If we zoom into Stanley, these are the great penguin beaches. This is worth taking a photo of. Stanley is right here. It is named after Lord Stanley of Preston. Yes, the same Stanley that the Stanley Cup is named after. For those Canadians out there, this is holy land for us, right? Gypsy Cove is right across, right there, very close. You can walk there in about 45 minutes or take the hop-on, hop-off bus. Volunteer Point is the one we have to go all the way around to get up here. This is unbelievable penguin viewing. 99% of the time, it is sold out before you even get on board the ship. So if you're going through either the Princess Tours or Via Tour, whoever you go through, if you can get a ticket to a Volunteer Point tour, do it and show me your photos. And if you're looking to adopt, I will sign up. Because I don't even have to be inside the Range Rover. I'll cling to the back. I've been there once, and it was amazing. I stood in front of 2,500 king penguins. I had my little penguin hat on, and I went up to them, and I whistled. And they all turned around and scolded me. It was the weirdest feeling. Bluff Cove is to the south. Bluff Cove is getting near a very special spot called Darwin Cemetery. This is where the Argentinian war dead are buried. One thing I will mention about the war is that attitudes have changed. As the generations go on, the war was seen less as an us versus them and more of a war is terrible. A lot of the folks that died were very young. A lot of them came, the Argentinians came from northern Argentina, so they came from tropical Argentina, and they were sent down to the Falkland Islands, not very well equipped, not well prepared, in the middle of winter. And so when the British soldiers came over, and Thatcher certainly sent the best of what she had, she sent the SAS. So James Bond showed up. with Harrier jets and laser-guided missiles and laser weapons. It was a very painful time for mothers and fathers and brothers and sisters and folks that sent away their kids. The ship that was sunk, the Argentinian ship that was sunk, was from Ushuaia. In Ushuaia, if you come off the ship and go left about 2 blocks, you can go to the memorial display talking about this war. So to go out there and to find out that the local school teachers, the local British school teachers, are teaching their children about the war, that it's an anti-war message, that the local school kids, 7, 8, 9-year-old kids, will pick out a soldier's grave, learn about that soldier, tend the graves. They'll take scissors and they'll cut the grass. They'll find little blue and white ribbons, which a lot of times are folks from Argentina coming out there and, this is the one time they're ever going to be able to see the spot where their uncle, their grandfather's buried. They fix it up. They keep it nice. This is a complete attitude shift even from 15 years ago. If you see folks on the Falkland Islands wearing a hat with the outline of the Falkland Islands with a superimposed Argentinian flag, this is not meant to be some sort of a political protest. What this is, in their culture, is they're coming to hallowed ground. In the same sense that New Yorkers will go downtown to where the Twin Towers were. And they'll take a moment, sometimes they cry, they connect to something much bigger than them. And so what I like to do is if I see somebody at the Thatcher Memorial or down at Darwin or any of these places, and I see that they're manifestly Argentinian, I wait for a moment where they're sort of, they're not having a moment of contemplation. I go up to them, I shake their hand, and I say, what is this place to you? And I let them tell me about it. Similarly with the British. There were British soldiers that died. War is terrible. I think in modern times you should never go to war. I look at some of the conflicts that are happening right now, and I shake my head. It's sad. So, with that, whenever I have an opportunity, I like to share a way to go to these places and seek joy. This is the secret message of going to Isla Pinguino. The Penguins were the first ones to come back to those beaches after the war. The Penguins walked in between the landmines. They weren't heavy enough to set them off. They say that the Falkland Islands have been landmine free for 20 years. Last year, one washed up on York Bay from in the water. So, and I'm very serious about this, if you're walking around on these beaches, stick to the paths. If you happen to see something unusual, green plastic, something with writing in it, leave it alone and tell one of the local rangers who are walking around. They're usually dressed like traffic cones, kind of bright orange. They have these goofy little pipe hats kind of thing. It is 100% not landmine free, but it is 99.99999% landmine free. I walk those beaches, I've taken my family on those beaches, but I do keep an eye out. This is the legacy of war. So that's terrible. Here's a penguin walking on that very beach where they found the landmine last year. This is a different penguin. This is a penguin that stands up tall, right? It's a little bit like the Humboldt penguins we saw a few days ago. We're up north, but instead of one stripe, it has 2 stripes. This is a Magellanic penguin. They are my absolute favorite penguin. This was the very first penguin I ever saw in the wild, this species. Love them. There are 7 different species of penguins you can see on the islands. Let's go through them. There's ones like this, there's ones like this. It's wonderful. Right now, some of you will be thinking, there's more than one type of penguin? Yes. There's 17, 18 if you're a lumper and a splitter, different species of penguins in this world. As we start looking at penguins and how their populations are fractured or broken up and doing DNA work on them, we may make that number grow as much as 20. There were penguins in old times that are extinct now that used to be 6'5", 300 or 400 pounds. Now the tallest penguin is about this big. It's an emperor penguin. We won't see emperor penguins because they are down in the mainland of Antarctica. But we do see king penguins. When we leave the Falkland Islands, Las Malvinas, Isla Pinguino, we're going to go past Gypsy Cove, past York Bay. Odds are you can see penguins with your naked eye as we fly past there. I'm not entirely sure with the storm how close to the rocks we're going to get. Hopefully not too close. But if there's an opportunity for us to do a narration, to talk about the beaches and talk about the penguins, that sort of stuff, Hutch and I will jump up on the bridge and we'll do that. How, by the way, how was the narration this morning? Was it okay? Could everybody hear us clearly? Fernando saw an opportunity to lengthen the announcement, so he came in there and he jumped in on the Spanish. And you know what? That's great. We were coordinating between the script, Google Translate, him translating it to actual functional Spanish, and then doing it. It was wonderful. Great team effort. Our first penguin is called the chin strap penguin. They have chin straps. Now, if you're in the cheap seats over here, you won't see much. So if there's a TV there, I had no idea. That's new. I just see the back of it. Oh, they're all black. I don't see it because I'm facing the wrong way. I've never been in the audience for this show. Chin strap penguins have little hats and little chin straps, and they're like a British sort of police officer. And they're bossy. They will patrol around an area. I have seen in a huge field of ice floating in the water, one little tiny scrubby iceberg with some penguin poop on it, and two chin straps there, chinnies I call them, fighting over the piece of ice. They're surrounded by other real estate. They're just bossy like this. And they're a good size, you know, and they weigh upwards of 20 pounds. They love to swim, and they're usually in larger colonies, about 100,000 at a time. For those that are on our next cruise going down to Antarctica, wait until we get to Deception Island. You will see upwards of 250,000 at once. And you smell them before you see them. Now, chinnies are part of the brushtail family, so you can see the brushtail right there. And they are mating for life. And it's a huge process to find a mate. Oftentimes, the males will preen themselves, so they're in pristine coats. They will walk up to the females. And the females kind of are like, get out of my face. Leave me alone. And the males, dejected, wander away. So, they do a human trait. They go and they find a rock, and they bring it for the female. We do the same thing. Ladies, how many of you have a rock on your finger brought to you by your husband, right? And they offer this rock to the female. And if the female looks at the rock and it's just round enough, and it's just nice enough, and maybe a little sparkly, she will accept the male, and the male kind of snuggle beside her. She accepts his presence, not to be her mate, but his presence. And after a while, if he's able to preen her, if he's able to build a nice nest, you know, there's a little bit of Valentine's dancing going on, and then they have babies. But they will mate for life. Now, that's not to say they have one mate for their entire life. If during that season they're unable to conceive a child, a viable offspring, they will split up. Or if the husband gets eaten by a sea lion, they will find new mates. So they're chunky. I'll be honest. I might be a chin-strap penguin at heart. They love to be laying down on their bellies to cool off. This one is sleeping. It's facing into the wind. It's snowing here. This is actually this is at Bertha's Beach. And they're fluffy. I cannot get over how fluffy penguins are. They're chubby, they're wonderful. I've had the opportunity to touch penguins. It was at a zoo in Cartagena. There's amazing zoos in Cartagena if you ever go, in Colombia. And to touch a penguin, they don't feel like you've had a chance to touch a bird's wing or like a turkey, something like that. The feathers are kind of hard. No, these are fluffy. The feathers are usually 3/4 of an inch. Little tiny, tiny, tiny feathers. To touch them is like touching a rabbit. The whole purpose of the feathers is to keep water out and to hold a layer of air against the skin. These are the gentoos. The gentoos have a little white stripe above their eyeball. They're sort of like the missing member of the band Kiss, kind of, you know, white above there. They have bright orange feet. That's their big characteristic. Again, part of the brushtail family. They're a little bit taller, a little bit heavier. And they are very much, they're habitual. They will find a path and they will walk that path. They will not divert off the path. Oftentimes Antarctic researchers come around, and if they walk across the path and they stop, look at the penguins will stop. They will not walk around, they will wait until the researcher moves. In fact, the rule of thumb, even in the Falklands, is penguins have the right of way. Because sometimes they don't deviate off the path. They have that path. And so what happens when you have two of them coming together is they will stand here in the middle for a little bit, squeaking at each other, and then one will kind of hop over the other one and go off. And usually it's the younger one, so this is the fully mature one. It has under its armpit there some of that bald spot to shed heat. This is a young one, it's still got some baby feathers. The old one holds still, the baby one hops over. It's phenomenal. Sometimes, though, they deviate from their path. So this photograph is kind of a famous photograph. It's from a National Geographic photographer. Leslie was her name. This is around 98, 99. She's on Antarctic soil, or ice, I guess. And she's setting up her tripod to take photos. She gets her camera going. She puts on her camera this thing called an intervalometer. It takes a photo every 4 or 5 seconds, just over and over and over again. Puts her backpack down on the ice. She hadn't been to my show to hear that you're not supposed to do that. Walks away from it. Turns and sees the most adorable zombie invasion. These penguins, most of these are males, from a distance saw her black backpack and thought it was penguin shaped and thought it was Bo Derek penguin shaped. And one by one they lined up to go and greet the backpack. Here they are lining up. In fact, the message has spread because going all the way back on the beach, all of these, for hours, they came up, went up to it, rubbed it with their little arms, cooed to it, rubbed their beak on it, and when that snooty little so-and-so didn't, say hi back, they went, "Burr," and they wandered off. It's amazing how ritualized and habitual these penguins are. The gentoos are fantastic. Here they are laying on a nest. So this is Mama on a nest, a stone nest made by the hubby. This is probably the hubby here. And there's some babies right there. Now they're really hard to see because they have the exact color of the rocks underneath, kind of a grayish, brownish color with black heads. They will have 2 babies. They do not hatch at once. One hatches a few days before the other one. So one will be a little bit larger than the other one. The idea behind this is that the skua, they're kind of like a gull that's like the Darth Vader of gulls, or the other predatory creatures will come through. They don't really want the eggs, they want the hatchlings. And so if there's one hatch in the nest, they'll grab it and they'll go. There still is a backup. The heir and the spare kind of thing. But if it's a good year and both the babies survive, they grow up, and it's wonderful. They eventually get larger and larger, and they don't quite have the same kind of plumage as the adults. They look a little bit gray. They aren't showing those secondary sexual characteristics of maturity. In the bird world in general, there's plumage for hatchlings, there's plumage for babies, there's plumage for teenagers, there's plumage for males and females, both ready to mate and not ready to mate. There's winter plumage, there's summer plumage. It's confusing. To quote one of my favorite naturalists, Noam, he's on board, don't look at the feathers, look at the beak, look at the eyes, look at the feet. Those characteristics will tell you more about the bird than the plumage. The plumage changes. But these ones are quite social. They love to work with other penguins. So here is a gentoo in and amongst a bunch of king penguins. It'd be like me hanging out with NFL linebackers that are twice my size. Maybe not twice my size, but bigger, right? These are the king penguins. This is an unbelievably beautiful penguin. They have reddish orange, kind of an ombre color saturation going down their body. Growing up in Alberta, we had a restaurant called Earl's. Do we have any Albertans in the audience? Okay, do you remember Earl's? Right, Earl's had a logo of a penguin. You went to this sort of steakhouse. It was kind of a nicer joint. There would be a giant rubber king penguin greeting you. And as a kid, I thought, wow, this is amazing. I wish these were real creatures. I went to Volunteer Point and went, wow, I could go for a steak right now. It's amazing. Not a penguin steak, come on. So they're huge, they're about 4 feet, they're upwards of 33 pounds. I've heard of reports of them going up to 50 pounds. Most of what you see here is fluff. Most of what you see is fluff. Now when they're younger, they are a species of penguin that will grow very quickly. So the babies, within a few months of hatching, will actually be about the size of the adults in height. Most of what you see is fluff. This is a baby here, wearing a shaggy brown coat of down. They cannot swim. They do not have the oil. They get the oil off of a gland above their little tail. They are not waterproof, so they must stay dry, and they must rely on mom and dad to come and feed them. This behavior here of bothering mom along the beak is feed me. The way that they feed each other, mom will go out into the ocean, grab some fish. She will partially swallow it into a little vessel on her neck called a crop, kind of like a storage pouch. Then she'll come ashore. If she's feeding really young babies to populate the bacteria in their gut, she'll actually swallow the fish. She goes ashore. She's harassed by a bunch of babies before she gets to her baby. She'll lean forward, open her mouth, and baby puts their entire face down their throat and feeds off the crop. Or they'll vomit up into their crop, that good bacteria, mama's bacteria. It will populate the baby's gut with good bacteria. This is, I'm hungry, mom. I'm hungry, mom. I'm hungry, mom. Sometimes the moms, if they don't have any food left in their crop, have to run away from their babies. So imagine you have a 4-year-old who's 6 feet tall and weighs as much as you, and the second you come home, wants some macaroni and cheese and won't stop because they're growing. Right? They have huge metabolism. Eventually, mom has to go back or dad has to go back. They both feed, and babies are left on their own. They kind of sit there and they're unbelievably luxuriously fed. They're sort of the Chewbacca of the bird world. You know? This time of year is a little bit early for the fluffy ones. You're going to see last year's babies. They sort of look a little bit mangy. I'll show you a picture in a bit. So here's a colony with this year's babies. And here's some last year's babies with some fluff on it. Colonies are amazingly large. The babies have unique calls. And the mothers and fathers memorize their babies' calls. So when a group of about 5 minutes, it sounds like is identified by the parents. Human mind calls it. Right? If you hear one, at some point in your life, you hear a baby crying and you know it's not yours. Or you hear a baby crying. But you can recognize that it's not a baby's moving out. That's what it calls moving out. And then it's just a little. So eventually you have it where the majority of the penguins around are babies. Because the moms and dads are out quickly. This is later into that first season. The babies are independent. They start exploring around, getting into some mischief. And eventually they become teenagers. And much like human teenagers, they decide to go through a phase of unique haircuts. This is them doing a catastrophic molt, where their feathers just go thoof, and they fluff off all at once. The last part to lose its baby down is the head, because the majority of the heat is shed through the head. We have that too. If you're cold, put a hat on, put a toque on, or a snow hat or a beanie if you're from Seattle, right? Don't put a jacket on first, put something to cover your head. This is where the majority of our heat is shed. Now, as adults, they display this by saying, I'm ready to mate, I'm a fully mature part of our society, by having these orange to yellow kind of stripes, and a little bit gray on the head. Now, the two differences are relatively from the same place, but interesting. The difference is in this colored part here. This is mate selection. This male is calling the female is ignoring it. These are emperor penguins. We do not have those on the route we're on. You see the difference? The color patch, the gray, the neck color patch is completely cut off from the chest color patch. On the emperors, it's connected, and there isn't very much gray. This is a king, this is an emperor. Emperors go the opposite way you'd think. In the summertime, they go into the Antarctic wastelands to follow the cold. When it gets really cold, they come out to the coast. Why they do that, I don't know. Birds like to follow rare ecological niches because then there's less competition, and they've figured out a way to keep their eggs warm. On the bottoms of their bellies, they have a little bald spot. They'll put the eggs on their feet, and they'll put the bald spot, and they'll just keep it warm. And they take turns going up to the coast to feed. So here's 2 bachelor dads. I can tell they're dads because I don't have a little pouch here. And the baby sitting in the kiddos. And yes, those are the penguins from that show. And they're amazing penguins. They really are. It was the subject of Scott, the great explorer. He was out trying to collect penguin eggs of the emperor, trying to find out where the rookeries were when he had his fateful end of his life and his crew. He froze to death on his way back. There's a couple names you'll learn about with Antarctic and Southern exploration: Admonson, Shackleton, Scott. It's amazing stuff. Hutch will do a better job than I will talking about the history and that kind of stuff. Look at this baby penguin. Look at that little fluffy thing. This is probably 3 weeks old. And here's, hard to say, this might be a mum. There's a little bit of the pouch right there. And they'll look after it. Here they are, laying on the ground, cooling off. Yeah, there's the Happy Feet baby. So that is what they look like. I have to commend the folks that made Happy Feet, because they really did a good job showing the anatomy of the penguins and also the personality. Adelie penguins are another one of my favorites. They tend to be a little bit rarer, smaller colonies, and they tend to be on the southern faces. These have black heads like this, little white eyes, and the way you say it is like the singer's name. Think of Adele. These are Adelie penguins. They're a penguin that loves to be up on the rocks as well. Here is a prospective mate bringing a rock to a lovely lady here. When she bows her head like this, that's saying, "No way, Jose, go away." He's made the mistake of not choosing a round rock. This is an angular rock. It's like having a lab-created diamond. Why would you want that? De Beers wants you to spend money on a dirt-created diamond. You know. Here's what a colony looks like. In the great sort of chain of being of a colony, the further you are away from the water and the higher up on the island you are, the more like Beverly Hills you are. If you're down near the water, you're closer to the leopard seals. That's entry-level houses, we'll say. There's the rock hopper, and there's a couple different types. This is a southern rock hopper. Notice the red eyes, the beautiful eyebrows, and the orange beak. And they do hop amongst the rocks. They will usually have 2 babies. So this is the first one that's hatched. The other one is still being an egg scenario. And they're chunky. They're chunky. They look like they have little tiny little wings. Here they are. The males are a bit larger. Usually in the bird world, the females are larger because they have to have eggs inside. But with the southern rock hoppers, the males are a bit larger. I don't trust those eyes. There's something about those red beady eyes. Now there's cousins that look very similar, and very rarely do they show up on the islands here. But this is not a southern rock hopper, but a northern rock hopper. It spent a lot more money on its budget in the spa. Do you see how there's a smaller kind of hair frill there? It's feathers, but it's not called the hair frill. Much larger. Okay. There's another version too, called an eastern. They have a little bit of white around the like this. This specific species is really inquisitive, and these are the ones that come up to you. These are the ones that will stand on your shoes. Do them a favor again with the penguin flu. Try to stay back and away from them. I mean, don't be like, get away from me, but just back away. Do your best to say, well, I know they're adorable, but whenever we interact with them directly, with any animal, whenever we interact with them directly, they're the ones that suffer the consequences. Those guys look like they're trying to mug you. Look at the eyes. Give me your noodles. There's also the macaroni penguins. These have nothing to do with Kraft and macaroni and cheese. It's an old name. 300 or 400 years ago, there was Italian fashionistas, people that would dress very fancy. They were called macaronis. We would call them dandies or fashionistas, right? And the name stuck. And so when penguins were being discovered, and they saw this penguin that had the most elaborate hairdo. I mean, a hairdo you could probably get elected to office with. Look at that. Right? Hey, come on. I'm not political. No. It's just a penguin. It's just a penguin. Come on. Take it easy. Take it easy. It's a sexy penguin. It's the best penguin. They named it the macaroni penguin because this was the fanciest penguin they had seen. Look at that thing. Handsome fella. They're not the brightest, I'll be honest. They come up on the beach. They run